something is stalking you in the dark. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Aliens Night Cougar Alien. Night Cougar Alien is the newest addition in NECA's Kenner tribute line. Drawing inspiration from the classic expanded universe aliens of the early 1990s, their team has transformed this Kenner classic into a modern version with all of today's detail and articulation. Before we get the old review underway for Night Cougar Alien, how about the first thing we actually do is figure out how big the figure stands. Now, granted, yes, there's a couple of different ways that you can have the figure displayed. I've taken the liberty of already bending its legs and having it on all fours. I guess technically you could have it on its hind legs as well, although it would look rather strange, I think, to be putting a Night Cougar Alien on only its hind legs. But whatever you want to do for certainly your collection. Let's go ahead, though, and grab the tape measure based on the way I've got it configured right now. From the front of its snout to the back of its hind legs, you're looking at the Night Cougar Alien being about 5 inches long. And then spinning that around, of course, so we can see it from the centimeter standpoint of things. Then you're looking at the Night Cougar Alien being about 13 centimeters long. Now, just, of course, also, if you're curious, you can, of course, bend the tail, just the way I have it right now. What I will do is measure off just how tall it is, based, again, on having it on all fours. Night Cougar Alien is about 4 inches in height, or it's about 10 centimeters tall. Of course, as well, the most fitting of comparisons would be to slide over the Night Cougar Alien and bring in the previously looked at Panther Alien. Oh, look at that. They're crossing the tails. Can we do that? Oh, it's streams. Streams we have to worry about. Don't cross the streams. They are using what I'm guessing to be the exact same mold, but don't let the fact that they've carbon copied one mold to the other detract you from wanting to pick up the Night Cougar Alien. Where it doesn't have the colors, those brighter colors that Panther had, it has its own rather interesting color scheme instead. I really like the darker colors that they went with when it came to this particular figure. The molds aren't the only thing that gets shared between the two figures, as the Night Cougar Alien also comes included with the Parasite. The same type of Parasite that came included also with the Panther Alien. What's rather interesting, though, is that this particular Parasite is actually called the Magnetic Kamikaze Parasite, whereas the one that came included with Panther was simply just called Attack Parasite. Are we then to assume that this Parasite is a little bit more dangerous than the one that came included with Panther? I don't really know. What I do know is that they've used a nice translucent, almost smoke plastic to give us this look of almost a lava-colored Parasite. That lava color scheme will be something that will be carrying over also to the Night Cougar when we look at that in a second. Flipping it around to the back, you can see some nice detailing done onto the back. Kamikaze Parasite. I believe they call it that. And then on the top, I don't know if you can actually see a slightly darker circle on the inside of it. No, that's not its brain. That's a little magnetic button that's inside of this. That's going to attach to the back torso of the Night Cougar Alien. Let's go ahead and grab that right now. All you really have to do, like we did before, is just line it up, and it sits just on top, in between the shoulder blades. In fact, it survives the blizzard test. You can tip the Night Cougar Alien upside down, and the Parasite's not going to fall off. I do like the way it's housed on here, and it doesn't really interrupt at all the sculpting that they put onto the back of the torso by even keeping just the battery inside the Parasite. I mean, again, it's very easy just to simply remove it, detach it anytime that you want, and put it back in place. And again, you can tip it upside down. It's not going to be going anywhere. Getting a closer look, though, at the Night Cougar Alien. And yeah, we are going to be bringing back in the Panther Alien so you guys can see the head sculpts appear to be identical to one another. I gotta say, I really do like the color scheme that they went with for Cougar Alien, though. It sort of starts like what you think to be just black, and then the more you look at it, the more you realize it's not so much black as it's almost like a dark, oily gray. I mean, in fact, the way the light hits it from certain angles, it almost seems to change colors. Whereas Panther Alien was really more sort of stuck and relegated just to more to that lighter white coloring and some additional gold that's been added, of course, onto the top of it. I did like, of course, the coloring of the crest that they put on top of its head, but that's, of course, all the things attached to the Panther Alien, all of which we've already had a look at in the earlier review. This particular alien, though, I certainly did want to say Predator. This alien has a really interesting design elements to it. One thing it doesn't have, though, is it doesn't have the translucent dome. The crest on the Panther Alien notably was more of a see-through brown plastic, where what they've actually done here, it seems like they've kept sort of the same consistent color scheme as the rest of it. It's not to say that this isn't translucent plastic. I still feel it is, but they've certainly gone and painted all over it, so it's really hard to see inside of it. You can't quite see, well, you can't really see the skull of the alien underneath it. They've specced on all this additional silver paint, and it really does add a nice little different effect when certainly you don't see so much of that happening on the rest of its body. A little bit of speckling of silver certainly goes a long way and just gives a little bit something extra to look at when you're looking at the creature. As I certainly said, though, it does have sort of a more of a lava look to it. All sort of the crusty surface of when lava is cooling. And then periodically you sort of have where the cracked sections and the real actually moving lava is starting to peek its way out. I get very much that vibe when I'm looking at the Cougar alien here. It's got some really interesting colors here. Its head sculpt, not all solely just that darker gray. In fact, again, you've got all these little veins of red that have been added in there as well. Like the one we looked at before, the mouth does open. Although the mouth on this one is tighter than the alien that we looked at before. It still has the interior jaw, the little tiny chompers that you can pull out. And it's actually rather tight. I think this was a lot tighter than the Panther alien we looked at before. Again, you just pop that back in and close up shop. Generally, I like to display these figures more times than not with actually their mouths closed. I like the idea that they always include the tiny little chompers, but I always prefer, especially more like the animalistic looking aliens, I always like to have the mouths closed instead. Like the Panther alien we looked at before, this particular alien has notably a very short head. It doesn't have a very long dome. It certainly doesn't have a long back section to its head either. It stops really abruptly short when it gets to the section of the neck, and it's only really then the crest that extends a little further from that. Really, again, like the way they've speckled on the paint. And they've actually even added what seems almost to be like a little bit of that additional red inside. Now, that could actually be the inside of its helmet or underneath. Because again, like this is translucent plastic. Those little markings of red could not actually be on top of the dome, but in actual fact could be underneath the head if I was to peel this off. You can't remove it, of course, but if you did want to remove it, it gives you a better idea on the back how that's a translucent clear plastic they've just, again, painted over top of it. Looking at the undercarriage of the creature, you can certainly see it's still, the same body as we looked at before. Here's what the Cougar alien looked like next to the Panther alien. Same still bodies, molded from one to the other. It's just, again, a big, definitely different, better departure, I think, where this is going the more lighter color scheme. Night Cougar is definitely going the more darker color scheme, and I gotta say, it really works well for this particular mold. This one actually looks more like an actual movie alien, unlike the Panther alien we looked at before. All these nice little veins that they've added to the shoulders, they actually kind of look less like veins and actually look more like ranking, the way they've painted on the stripes across that. Veins certainly are a little bit more apparent when we get down to the forearms. It also then bleeds onto the hands as well, which have, of course, their own individual articulation that we'll talk more about in a second. Really nice additional red that they've added across the spine, and that spine red also carries on into the tail as well. And like the alien we looked at before, it does have the wireframe tail, so of course you can bend that. We'll again talk more about that in a second with the articulation of the figure. And again, you've got some nice additional red that's added down the sides of the leg as well. I gotta say, I like the color scheme. I feel like from a purist standpoint, I feel like I lean a little more towards Panther Alien, but I gotta say, I really do like the darker color scheme here for Night Cougar. It does still use the same mold, yes, but the very different change of pace that they went with the color scheme gives us a very different, very acceptable looking color on this guy. I really do like the darker color scheme. I really like the way they've added that silver. I know I keep continuing to go back to the silver end of things, but that really does help to break up, because without that, you've got really so much of that dark blackish gray happening for the rest of his body. With all that now being said, I realize I probably said color scheme, I don't know, like 100 times. Let's instead move away from that and talk a little bit about the articulation here for Night Cougar Alien. Starting things off, first looking at the head sculpt. It is on a ball joint, so yes, you can rotate the head back and forth this way, and you could also move the head up and down this way as well. In addition to that, and slightly back and forth also as well. In addition to that, we already established the fact that the mouth does open and close, and the fact the little tiny chompers does come out. Close that up. In addition to that, though, if I'm going to just tilt the figure up here for a second, you can also see there's a hinge joint right at the bottom base of the neck that allows the head to actually look further down. So if you had actually wanted to prefer instead, just moving the Parasite off for a second. If you'd prefer instead, you can actually have the neck looking lower down. The problem with that, though, is, of course, with the ball joint being a little bit more limited here, you really can't then correct the matter and bring the head up. If you didn't want to have it looking forward, it would only really be your best interest to actually have the neck hinged backward. So at least it could properly look at what prey it's pursuing. The body, the upper torso, is on a very generous ball joint, so you can rotate that all the way around on the Night Cougar. You can also hinge it up, hinge it down, and you can also move it back and forth also as well. The individual arms are also on pin and hinge joints, so you can rotate those all the way around, and you can also bring them out at about 45 degrees. There is a double hinge on the elbow, a hinge right there. Can you see that? Sorry. Hinge joint right there, and there's a hinge joint a little further from that, gets a little closer to the forearm, and there's also a little bit of swivel also you can get in the forearm also as well. Hands rotate all the way around, and like the other aliens we looked at before, generally there's always a secondary hinge joint right at the fingers, where it only bends, unfortunately, both the fingers at the same time, but at least you get some posability happening there also as well. The back hind legs are also on pin and hinge joints, so you can rotate those all the way around. Just be careful, of course, that you're not banging the front forearms in the process. The legs do split out to about there. There is a bend at the knee. There's actually 2 points in the knees. So there's one joint right there, a little bit lower down. There's a joint right there, and you can definitely double bend those knees right there. The back hind leg also has a hinge joint, and then further down from that, as we get to around sort of the ankle area of the alien, there's also a hinge joint right there as well. Luckily, the figure is still tight on joints, that I can easily have the figure on all fours, and he hasn't developed any bit of looseness so far in the legs. And then rounding out the last of its articulation, it does have, of course, the wireframe tail. The wireframe starts here, right where those holes are. They're not air holes. They're just where the molding press actually puts the wire in. Hole starts right there, and basically guide your way all the way up to the very end of it. And there is the tail also as well. Really no different from the tail that we got before. So, of course, being the fact it does have the wireframe, you can easily manipulate and move the tail until you get the desired look that you want. Let's just once again straighten out the figure here, bringing back in the Panther Alien. And once again, still the same figure mold, yes. Oh, sorry. Let's just grab the Parasite, put that Parasite back on his arm, or on its torso. I wonder where the Parasite went with for the Panther Alien. Anyways, even though they are using the same mold, sure, it's almost like a night and day comparison, literally. Night colors, day colors. You got the lighter color scheme here for the Panther Alien, and then the much more darker color scheme when it comes to the Night Cougar Alien. Though they are sort of similar in being molds, they're mold brothers after all. I do like the different approaches that NECA Toys went with between the two different figures. That in the case of picking up both of them is certainly something you want to entertain. I certainly would encourage the idea of picking up both myself. I think really both of these look good on the shelf, where you're not looking at them necessarily and immediately thinking, oh, they're just using the same mold. They are. But it doesn't necessarily mean that one figure is any lesser of a looking figure just simply because they are using the same mold. Not at all. In fact, kind of having the two molds presented like this in two completely different color approaches, you get a really interesting, different approach when it comes to looking at the figures. I do like the lighter color scheme, yes, on Panther Alien, but I gotta say, I'm really digging those darker colors that they used for Night Cougar Alien. Really turned out to be a great looking figure. If you were one that was digging already the look of Panther Alien, then really Night Cougar Alien isn't that far of a stretch. It takes already that mold that worked so well with the Panther before, and simply just doing it in a darker oil slick gray. In some ways, it kind of looks under certain light conditions like it's more darker than really what it is. It's not until you put a light source on it that you get all these interesting lighter patches of silver start to illuminate. And with, of course, that little veins of red that run through the entire body of the alien here, again, very much looks like cooling lava. If you've ever watched National Geographic or any one of those TV shows and on a Sunday afternoon we have nothing else to do than kill a little bit of time watching TV, cooling lava also has that similar look where under certain ways it's lit, it looks like it's got a slight bit of a silver hue. And then, of course, periodically you'll have these veins of red that start to glow underneath it. And get a lot of that when I'm looking here at Night Cougar Alien. In some ways, it sort of looks like a nightmare xenomorph, like a vampire xenomorph. It doesn't, yes, have the translucent dome that the Night Cougar or the Panther Alien had. So it does lose a little bit of that. They are still using the translucent plastic, yes, but instead they decided to paint over top of it, adding some much appreciated speckling of silver. And I do really like the way that that looked also as well. Yes, it is using the same mold, but don't let that really be a detractor why, if you already had picked up the Panther Alien, you wouldn't still go out of your way to pick up the Night Cougar Alien. Really interesting looking figure. Now, again, for this figure, you can easily have it displayed either on its hind legs, or myself, I like to display both the figures actually on all fours. Because, of course, when I think of Night Cougar Alien, I think of Panther Alien, I would really want to display them on all fours. But yeah, you could technically display either one of them on their hind legs too. It's just entirely up to you. What do you guys think, though, of the Night Cougar Alien? And actually, a better question maybe to ask you, the viewing audience, between the two that we've looked at, as we had the chance to compare them both in this video, which color scheme do you like a little more? Do you like the lighter colors of the Panther Alien, or do you like the darker colors with the veins of red in the Night Cougar Alien? Which one do you guys like more? Let me know down below in the comment section. And if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you guys are seeing so far, just know that there's a whole bunch of other NECA reviews still lined up and coming your way. But if you are new here and you haven't yet done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's your best way to keep on board and be aware of all the new stuff that's coming up onto this channel. And of course, while you're also at that of hitting the subscribe button, make sure you're also turning on the bell notification. That is your way of getting those reminders every single time a new NECA or any other review pops up here on this channel. And just know that while we have wrapped up the review for right now of the Night Cougar Alien, there is definitely going to be a lot more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.